The Unwanted, Chapter 13. Can anyone recite for me Chairman Ho's teachings? My teacher asked, looking at no one in particular through her thin-rimmed glasses. Her hair was a tangle of big curls, spilling down to cover most of her face, except for the shiny tip of her nose and two thin red lips. Her skin was oily and dotted with tiny red pimples. Behind the desk, her body, at least 2 sizes too small for her uniform, sat up straight in her wooden chair. On the blackboard, her name was written in white chalk. Miss San, it said. It was the first day of summer school, but the sun had already cooked the classroom to baking temperature. From the last row, I raised my hand in the air with hesitance, and several pairs of dark eyes turned to stare at my face with curiosity. To my surprise, no one else in the class seemed to know the answer. Yes, the teacher acknowledged me. As she looked straight at me, I noticed that one of her irises floated upward to hide behind her eyelid. Looking out that socket was the back of her eyeball in an almond shape, staring blankly at my face. I stood up from my seat and recited the verses I had learned from the Northern soldier on the military truck after the fall of Saigon. Love thy country, love thy neighbors. Be a good student. Be a responsible worker. Get along with thy friends. Keep in line with the law. Take good care of thine own hygiene. Humble, honest, and courageous. Excellent. She clapped her hands together. Droplets of sweat fell from my forehead to the desk below, vanishing quickly into the wood's rough surface. What's your name? She asked me. From somewhere in the room, before I had a chance to answer her, a voice mumbled, half-breed. The rest of the children laughed. Silence, she said to the classroom. Turning her good eye in the direction of that sudden outburst, she remarked, That is a horrible thing to say to one of your classmates. You children should be ashamed of yourselves. Studying the wet spots my perspiration had made on the desk, I decided at that moment that my teacher was one of the loveliest persons I had seen in this new town. Despite the ridicule, I received a red neckerchief that day, the first boy in my school to be granted such an honor. My teacher said that it signified my commendable behavior as one of Uncle Ho's good children. I was to wear it every day on my shoulder until its color faded. Then, and only then, would I become the perfect citizen the country had long waited for. That night, when it was time for dinner, my grandparents realized Luan's absence and began to search for her in panic. She did not return home until after the curfew. In her arms, she carried a large cardboard box, which she set outside before entering the house. Luan walked up to my grandfather, who sat in his favorite rocking chair, reading a book about Zen Buddhism. She knelt before him. My grandfather stopped reading to look at her. His eyeglasses slid down to the tip of his nose. Uncle, Luan said, touching the soft fabric of my grandfather's pants with her hands. May I have a moment of your time, sir? He nodded. Tell me what's on your mind, little girl. I came with a purpose in mind. To bid you farewell, sir, she said quietly. Everybody in the room looked at Luan with surprise, but no one said anything. We all waited for my grandfather to respond. Closing his book and setting it down on the floor, he spoke in a voice that seemed sad, but contained no trace of astonishment. Where are you going? Uncle, a couple days ago, Mr. Trent gave me a pamphlet about an organization called the Young Volunteers, she explained. It got me thinking about my future. So this morning I went to the community center and spent the whole day there, meeting with some of the comrades and getting to know more about the assemblage. I found out that the group's main purpose is to enlist young people all over the country to aid the armed forces. The group is basically a supportive branch of the military. Although there are no more battles to fight, the country needs lots of help to clean up the damage that was done during the war. I figured, since I'm a cleaning maid, this sounds like a job for me. So I signed up. It only takes 3 short years out of my life, but in the end, my resume will have a good recommendation by the government. From the door, Lum interrupted. Oh, she's talking crazy. He took a step toward her. Yes, you are crazy, Luan. Then he turned to my grandfather. She will do no such thing. Stop her, Mr. Wynne. Stop her from making a fool of herself. Luan resumed her conversation with my grandfather, as if she did not hear Lum. I did join the court, Uncle, without your permission, but there wasn't time to ask for it. I am leaving tomorrow morning. The group sent everybody home tonight to pack and bid farewell to their loved ones. I don't have any relatives left since my father died. I only have you. Uncle, even though you would never admit this to me, I know you blame yourself for what happened to my father. Both of you may have been hit by the same bullet, but he was the one who got killed, and you were spared. So what if that's how it happened? You have done nothing but good deeds on my behalf since the first day I came to this family. I beg of you, no more guilt. I want you to know that I understand. You don't owe him or me anything because it was fate that killed my father. I also want to thank you from the bottom of my soul. Uncle, I am saying goodbye to you now because I have to leave at 3 a.m. Thank you for loving me all these years. Once my term of service is up, I will be back to see you again. My grandfather took Luan's hands in his and blinked several times. I understand, little girl, he said. Promise to take care of yourself and stay out of trouble? Yes, sir, I will. They hugged each other. However, the embrace was short and spiritless. Turning to my grandmother, Luan smiled. Her fingers touched the wrinkled skin of my grandmother's face with tenderness. Take care, Auntie. I love you, she said. Do you know where you are going? Can we write to you? My grandmother asked. I don't know much about the future, Auntie, Luan said. I was informed only that we were heading to Hugh on foot. We will stop along the way to help people build new houses, pushing the jungles back to gain more land and clean up the debris from the war. This will be a challenging experience for me, and I am afraid that I won't have a steady address for quite some time, Auntie. I will write regularly, though. Sounds like you have everything planned already, my grandmother chuckled, but I have no doubt about your abilities. You are a good girl, Luan. Come back to us soon. She turned to my mother, who stood in the middle of the room. Luan's eyes avoided my mother's stare to look at the floor. My mother broke the uncomfortable silence between them. To set the record straight, I never asked you to leave the house, Luan. I just want you to know that. Yes, madam. I know. I never wanted to leave either, especially now that your baby is coming. But I have my reasons for leaving. Please take care of yourself. Don't leave because of Lum. The light reflected in my mother's dark eyes as she glared at her boyfriend. Luan turned to Lum and said in a low tone, Goodbye, Lum. Take care of my mistress and treat her well, because she is having your child. If you wrong her, I will make certain that you'll pay for it when I come back, and that is my solemn promise. Don't interpret it as an empty threat. You and I should never have been together in the first place. I may have had no choice in the past, but as for the present and the future, I choose to leave so that you can stay. He did not reply. Instead, a corner of his lip twisted into a disgruntled smile. Luan turned to look for my brother and me. She knelt down, beckoning us to walk into her outstretched arms. Look at you, she whispered to me, touching the bruises on my face. What did you do? Get into a fight? I just leave you alone for one day and you're already getting yourself into trouble? Listen to me. I won't be around to take care of you anymore. You have to take care of yourself and your brother. Help your mom with the baby when it comes, yes? And most importantly, don't forget me. I won't, Luan. I'll miss you, I told her. I know, sweet angel. She smiled. I got you a present for your birthday. Something sensible for you to practice your skill before the baby arrives. Want to see? I nodded. She ran outside and returned in a moment, holding a cardboard box in her hands. Then she lowered it to my eyes level. There was no cover on top of it. Jimmy and I both looked inside and saw a puppy huddled in a corner and looking up at us with large black eyes. Its body was covered with short brownish fur. It had droopy ears and a nose that was so wet on its short snout it shone like a brand new button. Upon seeing us, the dog cried softly. I was so excited that I kissed Luan all over her face. "Go ahead, touch her," Luan whispered. "She is yours, Kian." I reached inside the box and touched the puppy. Its fur felt like velvet. Then I picked it up and held it close to my chest, feeling its heart beat wildly. The dog looked up to lick my nose, and that simple act created a bridge of trust between us. I looked down at the puppy's face, resting against the thin fabric of my pajamas, and a feeling of calm swept through me. "She is 2 months old, Kian," Luan said. Her voice seemed far away, since all of my attention was devoted to the small creature I held in my hands. "I have good news and bad news for you," she continued. "The good news is that she is weaned from her mother, so you can feed her food starting tomorrow. The bad news is that she has a slight birth defect. As you can see, her front paw is deformed. She can only walk on 3 legs. I picked her out for you because she needs lots of attention, and that is going to be good practice for helping out with the baby, Kian. Think of a nice name for her, will you?" Turning to my brother, she said, "I didn't forget about you, Jimmy. The puppy is partially yours, and you can help Kian take care of her. You are still too young to have one on your own, so for the time being, you have to learn how to share." Jimmy nodded, his eyes fixed on the puppy. Then Luan asked my mother, "Madam, is it fine with you that the children keep the dog? I am sorry for not asking you first, but I do want to leave them something to remember me by before I go." My mother nodded hesitantly. A thought flashed through my mind, and I told Luan, "I have a name for her, Luan. I want to call her Lulu." "Lulu is a beautiful name," Luan said. "Where did it come from?" "She looks like Lulu." "The British singer?" "Yes. I like her songs very much." "Okay, Lulu it is." "Maybe someday this dog will learn to howl, 'To Sir, with love for a living,'" Luan said, and everybody laughed except my mother. That night, Lulu slept inside her box next to me, her body curved into a half circle, her nose hidden in between her paws. The next morning when I woke up, Luan was gone.